right, right on time. We'll get started. Hi everyone, thank you for joining me today. I'm Mia Davis. I'm the Director of Environmental and Social Responsibility at Credo Beauty. And this is an Instagram live class on Clean Beauty 101. What is clean beauty? Why does it matter? So thanks for joining us today. I won't spend too much time talking about the current situation, the coronavirus. I just want to say that I'm thinking of everyone. I'm working from my home office here in Boston, where I work from here a lot, but it feels completely different when you have to work from here, right? And I'm just really grateful to have the incredible community that is Credo and all of our brands and all of our friends and fans, customers, allies, that are getting together and using tools like Instagram Live to talk about really important content, really fun content too. We've done some master classes with some brand founders and doing one on Thursday with Katie Deno, who is an incredible makeup artist and part of our Clean Beauty Council. So I hope you'll join us for that one. This one will be a little bit more serious in that we're going to be talking about why clean matters. So we're going to get into a little bit of environmental health background and concepts. But I'll also try to keep it fun because after all, we're talking about beauty. So Clean Beauty 101, thanks for joining. I want to start by saying how I kind of got into this. How did I end up at Credo Beauty as our Director of Environmental and Social Responsibility? Well, I've always cared tremendously about the environment and environmental health. And for me, I've always thought about the environment not just existing out there. It's not just the rivers and oceans and lakes and trees. It's not, when we think of environmental pollution, it's not just a smokestack or polluted groundwater. That's all, of course, the environment and environmental pollution, but it goes further than that. We are the environment. And I think I've always known this intuitively, kind of being like a born and bred environmentalist and activist, but it really hits home when you learn about some of the data and about something called toxic trespass, which is when toxic or potentially harmful chemicals get into your body without your permission, without you knowing that they were there, without you knowing much about them at all. And this can happen in a lot of different ways, and no one in the entire world is exempt from toxic trespass. It also really hits home for people who aren't studying this and who aren't environmentalists. This concept really hits home if you're thinking about becoming pregnant, or you are pregnant, or you have some other health, potentially a health issue, a vulnerability, and you start to think about all these different exposures and all these different chemicals that maybe they were tested for safety, maybe they weren't. Maybe they're harmful in certain doses, maybe they're not. Who's watching out for us and who's minding the store? When you're pregnant, it's incredibly obvious that you're in an environment and that the separation between the outside environment and you as a human being is not what a lot of us are kind of born and bred to believe. It's interesting and sad to note that babies are born pre-polluted. Babies are born with chemicals in their bodies that we find out in the environment due to pollution and even in the products that we bring into our home. Now, babies aren't using products like personal care products and beauty products, right? I mean, there was a thought a long time ago, or I suppose some might still think this, that the placenta is like this like magical steel iron barrier that nothing can get through. And that's not the case. Interestingly, a lot of the chemicals that we interact with in our homes and on our bodies do get absorbed by the skin and into the bloodstream and can get into our organs and even into the placenta. So this is an issue that hits really deep and is a really big one. And it is something that I care a lot about, and it ended up bringing me into the world of clean beauty. So the way that I kind of went to from thinking about environmental pollution and toxic chemicals and now as a clean beauty leader was also, I guess it was interesting. I think it was pretty interesting. I never was a beauty junkie. I was never thinking about the products that I was using. I mean, I liked them like a lot of other people. But then when I started to think about, parabens that were used as preservatives, or methyl-isothiazolinone, which is a fun one to say, another preservative, being linked to major health problems or potential health problems, and being slathered all over our skin many times a day from a bunch of different products, and then potentially being absorbed into the body, I started to get really interested in this particular industry. And I started to work at the Campaign for Safe Cosmetics with a bunch of incredible public and environmental health activists all over the country, asking brands, asking companies to start taking a different approach, not the, it's just a little bit of chemical, it'll be fine, but a different way to evaluate the way that they chose chemicals that they were using in the products that we were buying and putting on our bodies. And that work was really incredible. I learned a tremendous amount, and I read a lot of really good books along the way. I brought some here to show you guys. So when we're thinking about environmental health and how this relates to clean beauty and clean products that you bring into your home, there is the original Silent Spring by Rachel Carson. If you haven't read it, or you were forced to read it in high school and you didn't enjoy being forced to do something, I encourage you to pick it up again as a volunteer, as a reader who cares about these issues. It's incredible. It's seminal. It's basically like the birth of the current environmental health movement. Rachel Carson is absolutely my shiro, and I encourage you to check it out. I have a visitor coming. You can tell this is this was not staged. This is Nigel. He's here to talk about clean beauty. Another one of my favorite books that I wanted to flash up to you guys is called Our Stolen Future. It's written by someone called Theo Colburn. She's a scientist, and a couple of co-authors, and it's incredible. It's about some of the chemicals that are used in not just personal care, but a bunch of other products that we use on a daily basis, and how low doses of some of the chemicals might be a problem. Another one that I wanted to show you guys is called Living Downstream by Sandra Steingraber. Sandra Steingraber is a PhD biologist and also a poet, which is an incredible combination. She's an amazing writer, and she talks about ecology and toxic trespass, and how low doses of chemicals that we're exposed to day in and day out from different sources can have health impacts, and what we can do about it from the really beautiful scientific but really beautiful ecologist point of view. And the last one I wanted to share before I talk about Credo's Clean is Toxin, Tox Out. This is written by my friend Rick Smith and his co-author Bruce Laurie. And this one's really cool because it talks about how if you make a shift to going cleaner, so not using maybe like drugstore personal care products and beauty products and shopping at Credo products and doing a clean swap, you can actually see the load, your personal toxic load go down. In the book, they tested blood and urine samples from volunteers that made clean swaps from drugstore to like Credo brand partners, and it was a pretty cool. It's really cool data to see the body detoxify and get rid of the stuff that ideally shouldn't be there. So I'm going to take questions at the end, but I'm going to spend the next couple of minutes talking about what clean means to Credo and how we define it. I often hear like, oh, clean. You know, I saw an article the other day in a paper that was really kind of talking about how clean doesn't have any meaning. What is safe? What is clean? What is sustainable? It doesn't have any like federal meaning. The law that's on the books that governs the beauty industry is from 1938. It's a page and a half long, and it governs a $80 to $200 billion industry, depending on how you, like what segments of the industry you're counting. It's a massive industry. There's almost no regulation. So certainly clean isn't a regulated term, but we defined it at Credo. And for us, it's really, I think of it as a Venn diagram, and it's the nexus of a few different things. So there's safety, there's sustainability, there's sourcing, there's ethics, and there's transparency. So clean kind of sits in the middle of all of these things. And when we talk about safety, here's Nigel again. What we mean is, does this ingredient have the potential to cause harm, and at what levels? When we talk about sourcing, we mean, is this ingredient synthetic? Is it natural? Is it naturally derived? Most of the ingredients out there, even the ones that are marketed as natural, I would argue are naturally derived. That doesn't necessarily mean there's a problem with them. In fact, they might be perfectly safe and even quite sustainable, but they're not necessarily all the way natural. So we have safety, we have source. And one more note on source, synthetic also doesn't necessarily mean harmful or unsafe. Nigel refuses to not be a part of this Instagram live, so I'll stop kicking him off. So safety, sourcing, sustainability. So you can have an ingredient that is safe. It poses little to no risk to human health or the environment. And it's natural, but it might not be grown sustainably. And palm oil is a really good example of that. We need to be increasing the demand for some more sustainable palm because it's actually a pretty great ingredient. So safety, sourcing, sustainability, ethics. You can have an ingredient that is natural and that is very safe, but have poor working conditions, or in the case of mica, you can have children actually working in mines in India to source mica for not just the beauty industry, but largely for automotive industry. So that's one example of ethics. And then ultimately, we can't even have this conversation without greater transparency. So currently with that law on the books that I mentioned from 1938, companies can hide dozens or hundreds of chemicals under the term fragrance. This is something that I've been fighting for a decade, and my colleagues at Credo and at the Campaign for Safe Cosmetics and Women's Voices for the Earth have all been pushing for more transparency around fragrance. If the consumer or Credo or one of our brand partners doesn't get to know what's in the fragrance from the fragrance house that we're buying it from, how can we know about the safety? How can we know about the sourcing or the transparency or the ethics, right? So we need to be pushing for greater transparency around all ingredients and around the entire supply chain. But fragrance is kind of like the biggest problem and a very fixable problem, which is good. It's nice to at least be able to see the solution. So that's what clean is to Credo. Now, does it mean that every single ingredient in every single product ticks off all of those boxes? That we have all the safety data and we know that it's totally safe, or that it's natural and sustainable and ethically sourced? No, not necessarily, because there are huge data gaps on a lot of the ingredients that are used in beauty, but also in all consumer products. And that's because in the United States, we don't have a law that mandates that these ingredients are thoroughly tested before they're put on the market. Things are much better than they were when I started this work over a decade ago, but there's still a lot of room for improvement in terms of proving that a chemical is acceptable to be used in the marketplace as intended, instead of like, oh yeah, we have enough data, we have a little bit of data, that's enough, or we have no data, but I'm sure it'll be fine, we'll deal with it later if it's a problem. We have a hard time even regulating or getting rid of asbestos, and we know that causes cancer. And very few ingredients have such a clear cause and effect as something like asbestos. So we have a lot of things to fix on the national regulation of how chemicals come onto the market. So not every ingredient and not every product will fully tick off all of these boxes. But the important thing is that we're pushing the industry in this direction, and that we're defining clean, and that we're embracing the complexity of clean. So clean isn't just safe. Clean isn't just natural. You can't say, oh, in order to be considered clean, you have to be 80% natural and then done. It's actually a lot more complex than that. That makes it harder to explain. That makes it necessary to maybe have a nice long Instagram chat with you guys to define clean. But it's more honest, and it's just the way that we know that we need to be moving if we're actually going to have real impact to protect consumers' health and the environment. And ultimately, this is about protecting health. So earlier I was talking about toxic trespass and about how these chemicals can move from the outside environment, or water pollution or air pollution, food, consumer products, and into our bodies. And for some of these chemicals, it might be fine because they might be perfectly safe. So chemical does not equal toxic, right? I say chemicals that can cause harm, or toxic chemicals when I mean harmful chemicals. Water is a chemical. Everything is a chemical. And we are not chemophobic. What we are pushing for is more information, more safety data about the chemicals that we see in our industry and across the board in consumer products. I like to think of environmental exposures to chemicals as think of it as a pie, and your exposure through beauty products is one slice of the pie. Now, for some people, that might be a big slice. You might use a lot of them. And for others, it might be a smaller slice of the pie. For most of us, food, air, and water are going to be a much, much bigger slice of the pie. We also have a lot less control over that hunk of the pie. Like, How many people can move if their water is contaminated? Not very many. Or put in a whole home water filtration system. Those are thousands and thousands of dollars, especially the good ones that get out all the stuff. That's not something that everybody can shop their way out of, right? Personal care products, beauty products. Again, not everybody's going to be able to shop at Credo or to have the opportunity to have safer, cleaner products. But we have much more control over this segment of our environmental exposure than a lot of others. And the more we increase the demand for cleaner, safer stuff, the more opportunity we will have to have a better price point, not just at Credo, but across the board. So the good news is that there are so many brands that we are partnering with, 130, that have met the Credo Clean Standard. The standard is the strongest standard in the industry. It starts with our dirty list, which is 2,700 ingredients that we tell brands they cannot formulate with, and they have to control for potential contamination of those ingredients as well. An example of that might be like lead. People aren't purposefully adding lead to lipstick or color cosmetics, but it can contaminate mined minerals or man-made synthetic minerals. So we ask brands to control for that potential contamination. So 2,700 plus ingredients that we say no to on our dirty list. It's the most robust restricted substance list that I know of. And then beyond that, the dirty list is really the foundation for the Credo Clean Standard. And then we go far beyond that to really articulate and operationalize those other buckets of clean that I was talking about. So safety, sustainability, source, ethics, and transparency. Things like we ask brands to make sure that they are getting the documentation from their ingredient suppliers to back up growing practices, all kinds of things about the purity of the ingredient to make sure that they're making the cleanest products that they can. So I'm really proud of the work that we've done on the Credo Clean Standard. It is industry leading, and it's not easy to partner with 130 brands. Like we're not making this stuff. You have more control when you make the stuff. When we're reaching out and partnering with all of these brands to try to make sure that they're able to walk the walk, it's pretty complex, and we're always layering on more. The more we learn, the more we need to start to get more compliance around. And we're going to be doing a lot more on packaging to come too, which is really exciting. In an area for a lot of opportunity to improve on packaging. So the brand partners have been incredible. We learn from them, they learn from us. We're leading the way. We think that clean is here to stay, and that it's absolutely matters to do clean swaps and reduce your exposure to toxic chemicals and to create the demand for safer, better stuff. So I just did a lot of talking at you about a lot of intense topics, including toxic trespass and defining clean. And I would love to take some of your questions. And my friends at Credo, I'm on Slack with them over here, and they're going to help me answer some of your questions. So one that we just got are, what are toxic chemicals that we should be watching out for? So thankfully we have that list, the dirty list of the 2,700 ingredients that we say no to and that our brand partners have agreed to control for in their formulations. Not all of the chemicals that are on that list are common in beauty products, but they could potentially be used. It's more like a few hundred that are really common. Some of the ones that you probably have heard of and that you might be looking out for include parabens. So those are preservatives. Used to be really, really common, less common now in this space since so many brands are free of them. Not all of them are linked to harm, but Credo's being very precautionary and has said from day one, no parabens. That's because some of them are linked to hormone disruption, which in turn can be linked to a bunch of other problems, including breast cancer. So we think it's good to be precautionary on that. Another one is that other really long one I mentioned before, methyl-lysothiazolinone. It's more common in like household cleaning and laundry products, which I don't have a problem with it there actually. But in skincare, I think we have way better options for preservation. So that's one to avoid. I think fragrance is a big one to avoid unless the brand is disclosing, fully disclosing fragrance, or at Credo, at least they have to categorize their fragrance. So before I was speaking about what a loophole it is, you can kind of like throw anything in there and not tell you don't have to tell anybody what's in your fragrance blend. At Credo, we require that all brands at the very least categorize their fragrance so that you know if you're getting a natural, a naturally derived, or a synthetic fragrance. You might not care, but if you do want to know more about your fragrance, at the very least, you can walk into our store and know that. And we also are pushing for full ingredient disclosure. So for fragrance, whether it's a cologne, body spray, perfume, or a fragrance that's used in, moisturizers, shampoos, cleansers, I would encourage you to go with Credo, of course, or go with brands that are fully disclosing, even outside of Credo, because fragrance can hide synthetic musks that can be problematic, potential hormone disruptors, allergens, sensitizers, phthalates, which are also hormone disruptors or endocrine disruptors, linked to a bunch of problems at low doses too, which is highly relevant because that's how we're exposed in beauty. So someone's asking, how can I access the dirty list? So go to credobeauty.com, and on the top navigation bar over to the right, there's a section called Why Credo, and there's a bunch of amazing content there. We've actually just done a lot of work, our entire team doing some rewriting and redesigning so that you can navigate the dirty list in a much easier and more intuitive way. I hope you love it. I hope it's a great tool for you. You can see some of the common ingredients that are used in other beauty products and why they're problematic. And you can also do this like drop down big expanded list so that you can see, it's not all 2,700 of the chemicals that we prohibit, but it's a lot of them, and you can learn a lot more about them. Where are they found commonly? Why? What are they used for? And what are the potential health impacts or environmental impacts that Credo is trying to avoid? Another question is, how do brands get started with being featured at Credo? So you would make sure, do a first pass if you are an entrepreneur and you're starting your own new brand. Do a first pass of that dirty list and do your best to make sure that you are complying with it before we open the door to a conversation. That would be really helpful. And then you can send in a submission to the Credo merchandising team, and they will work with you to figure out if it's a good fit. So that's a good first step. I do want to say, while teammates are sending me more questions, I wanted to let you guys know, if you don't know, that we have an incredible team on credobeauty.com. It's Credo Live. So we have a few people that are always regularly staffing it, and they are makeup artists and estheticians, and there are store staff. So as you know, right now our stores are closed, or you probably figured that we are participating in physical distance, stay at home. We hope that you are too. So we closed our stores, and our store staff, who are incredibly knowledgeable, wonderful people who love clean beauty and want to talk about it, are all on hand to answer your questions and to help you figure out what products you can swap out. So for example, if you are new to clean beauty, you've been wondering, what it is and where you start, they would have some amazing tips for you based on who you are, what your skin is like, what colors you're interested in, what your routine is. But I would also add that certainly go with what you're running out of first, right? Just economically, it makes sense. You use up what you have if you like it. But think about the stuff that you use the most or over the most, the biggest surface area of your body. So if you're using, body lotion or balm every single day, or body oil, and you have a lot of undisclosed fragrance in there and maybe some other chemicals that you weren't so sure about, certainly if some of the chemicals are appearing on the dirty list and you want to get right on that and be precautionary, think about making some swaps there. And the Credo Live team is amazing, so they're ready right now to help you out. Can you define again what clean beauty means to Credo? Yes. So clean beauty to Credo means that you take into account a bunch of different factors. First and foremost, the safety of the ingredient. Could the ingredient cause harm at the doses that it's used in these products to people or the environment? If so, we need to do a really deep look into, do we need that ingredient? What are the alternatives? Even if there aren't alternatives available, should we just say absolutely no to this ingredient in this product because it poses too big of a risk? So safety, sourcing, is the ingredient natural? Is it naturally derived or synthetic? Sustainability, because it could be natural and it could be safe, but it might be really unsustainable. Ethical, were people paid a living wage? Were people displaced, or were animals displaced by the way that this ingredient is grown? Like in the case of plantation farming and slash and burn techniques. So multiple points to what is clean, but the way that we operationalize it starts with the dirty list and then the Credo Clean Standard. We have a lot of really good content on the website about the Credo Clean Standard if you want to totally geek out with me on that. And it's all these different buckets that we require our brand partners to comply with. They have to sign that they are, like, it's a 26-page document. They're signing, they're initialing, saying, I got it. This is what's required of us. Beyond just saying that they're the restricted substances, beyond the dirty list, they're agreeing to compliance. This is a great question. Someone wants to know about sustainable packaging. Yes. So we care a lot about sustainable packaging and have been putting an incredible amount of time and effort into developing a policy. And we're close to announcing it, and we will absolutely be sharing that with you when things look a little bit different. The current climate just isn't quite right to make that announcement, but we're really excited about the work that we've put into it and what we'll be doing lockstep with our brand partners to increase sustainable packaging in this space. It's a big problem. We're aware of it. We're not at all turning a blind eye to it. We also know that right now where we are, not just Credo, but like everybody who's consuming stuff and like zero waste is really far apart. So I just want to put in an early plug that we won't be using too many buzzwords or over-promising that, come into our store and shop zero waste. If you're consuming stuff, it's probably not going to be zero waste, and we just need to have a come to Jesus about that, I think. So I'm proud of the policy. I can't wait to share it with you. In the meantime, that we have a lot of brands who do care about this already and who are making great strides and are absolutely leaders in the space using like paper compacts without mirrors, for example, refillable packaging, not just in the way that you might think of it in like a Whole Foods, like bulk food section type of refill, but like drop-in replacements for components that you can keep. So the outside case you keep, and then you drop in the refill. Certainly we have a lot of brands using high PCR content plastic, glass, so absolutely we care about this very much. Someone wants to know about a safe synthetic. Great question. You will never find me using the word safe synthetic. That's not because synthetic chemicals are inherently unsafe. It's because I don't think we usually have the data to say that anything is safe, like water is safe. Aside from that, I try to say words like safer or better, or we have data that indicates that this is not a problem. I try to be pretty conservative in the way that I talk about it, which I know our marketing team probably doesn't love because it's harder to message around. But we do allow synthetic ingredients at Credo. Most of the ingredients on the dirty list are synthetic. Okay, so most of the ingredients on the dirty list are synthetic. On the other hand, we don't think that because it's synthetic, it's necessarily unsafe. We look at the feedstocks of the chemical, right? Like if it's made with a couple of, monomers that are carcinogenic, then probably we're not going to allow that final ingredient in the product, that synthetic ingredient. Even if there isn't a lot of data on it, it just doesn't look like it was built very well. I don't want to employ toxic chemicals up and down the supply chain. So even if it doesn't look like it's a huge risk to you, the end consumer, it's probably not good for the people who are working on making that chemical or making that product. And it might not be good at the end of life when it's degrading or being burned off or buried in a landfill. So that's your long answer to the question of what do I think about safe synthetics. One example of a synthetic, though, that I think we do have pretty good data on health-wise is dimethicone. So dimethicone is a silicone. It's a linear silicone. On the dirty list, we have prohibited cyclic silicones because there's more data that indicates that these could be a human health concern and definitely an environmental concern. I don't think that dimethicone is awesome for the environment. I'm not going to be out there defending the petrochemical industry for making tons of synthetic chemicals that we use every day. On the other hand, dimethicone is pretty awesome at what it does, and it's big and it sits on the surface of the skin. So when you've used a primer or a foundation or a concealer or a SPF, and it has that like really nice glide in it, and you're like, wow, this is really beautiful. I really love that this isn't tugging at my skin. It's really awesome. Probably has dimethicone in it. And then if you use another product, one that might be marketed as like very natural, and it doesn't have dimethicone in it, if you're not enjoying that user experience as much, that might be one of the things that's missing for you. If it's more important for you to go more natural and to not have a synthetic ingredient like dimethicone in there, I am all for you doing that. A lot of consumers won't use that product. That's just where we are right now. They don't like the way it feels. They don't want it. So that's an example of a synthetic that I feel pretty good about its safety. Could there be other concerns, environmental concerns or whatnot? Yeah, there's not a ton of data. Doesn't give me, I sleep at night knowing that dimethicone is allowed, but I don't love it. This is the complexity of clean. I hope that if you're still with me on this, you can appreciate all these factors and all these very real-time examples. All right, what's another question we have? How can we ensure that all the brands that are carried at Credo have sustainable sourcing practices? Great question. So we do not police every single ingredient. It's entirely possible that there are some ingredients that don't have ideal sustainable practices, especially if they're synthetic. It's really hard to follow that back to the petrochemical that it started with and how it ends up kind of going through all these different processes before it ends up in the goop that's in the bottle that you buy at Credo. However, where we know that there are flags, especially around, for example, mica, palm oil derivatives, which are many, 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 we do our best to get that information back to the brands and say, hey, palm oil, natural, really, really safe, could be sustainable, but usually isn't. Please source your palm oil, if at all possible, from Palm Done Right or the Roundtable for Responsible Palm Oil, or Roundtable for Unsustainable Palm Oil, because we have to be moving the market in that direction. The world is we're not gonna do away with palm oil. Palm oil is not going anywhere. We need to be increasing the demand for much better, more sustainable, much cleaner palm oil. There are other examples too of ingredients that should and could be grown in a more sustainable way. We have a lot of ingredients that are certified organic in the store, which is awesome. It's one of the most meaningful standards and certifications, and does a lot for the health and safety of the environment and for sustainability. Questions are still coming in here. Say an organic ingredient comes from a place of extreme pollution. Can you take the environment into consideration? That's a really complex one. Organic is one of the most meaningful certifications. I would say it is the most meaningful certification that's out there for cosmetic and food ingredients. Now, it only applies to ingredients that can be grown, obviously, right? Because organic is a growing standard, so it doesn't apply to minerals, water, or synthetics. But if you can grow it, and not everything is available as an organic ingredient, but theoretically, you could grow anything organically if you can grow it. And organic is really meaningful, and you can actually get in trouble for saying that something is organic if it isn't. So this is a case where I'm sure you guys have heard about greenwashing, where a company can say look how incredibly eco-friendly we are, look at how natural we are, look at whatever, and maybe they do a little bit, but then it's kind of like the sin of omission. They're over marketing how green they are. when I started doing this work, you could even say that you were organic. You could call your company X, Y, and Z organic and not contain an organic ingredient. You might remember, if you are as old as I am, you might remember a certain commercial that of like someone lathering their hair and talking about a totally organic experience, right? And if you don't know this commercial, I'm sorry, this example will be totally lost on you, but it wasn't organic. The product was not organic at the time at all. And now the USDA and the Consumer Product Safety Commission and the state of California and litigators, there's a bunch of people who can come down and crack down on people saying that things are organic when they're not. So that's helpful. You know, if something is grown to organic standards, but it's grown in a environmentally polluted way, if the contamination or the problems with the environment are affecting its organic standard, then it won't pass anymore. So, yeah. Okay, we got a couple more questions here. This is a good one, phenoxyethanol. So phenoxyethanol is a word that you have probably seen before, and you might have seen some controversy around it. People love to hate phenoxyethanol, and I don't know why. I have a theory, an open theory, obviously, that it's scary looking but pronounceable enough. So, because no one ever asked me about methyl-isothiazolinone, and there's a lot more data, a lot more concern around that ingredient, but not once in my decade plus of doing this has anyone asked me about it. Phenoxyethanol looks scary. And there are some blogs out there that say that it's a problem. There are stores that have prohibited it from their products across the board. I have done a lot of looking into phenoxyethanol and hired a toxicologist to examine phenoxyethanol, have looked at the green screen hazard assessment for phenoxyethanol, and I see no problem with using it under 1% in a finished product. It's a broad spectrum preservative. We need preservatives, guys. So like, I feel differently about preservatives in food than I do in personal care products. If you have a product that has, water in it and a bunch of gorgeous plant-based ingredients, all these like proteins and sugars and things that are going to get eaten by bacteria, yeast, and mold, you have got to put stuff in there to make sure that doesn't happen, or you're going to pump it out in your hand and it's going to be full of disgusting stuff. It's going to be bad for Credo, bad for the brand, bad for your skin, a waste of product, so unsustainable, bad for the environment. We have to be using preservatives in anything that has water in it, basically, especially if air and fingers and germs and stuff can get in there and encourage growth. So preservatives are not bad, but we should be smart about the preservatives that we use in this space or in any products. We shouldn't use more than we need. So one of the analogies is, don't use a sledgehammer when a fly swatter would do, right? Like, just use what we need. I see a lot of brands, not at Credo, but in like conventional big beauty. If I go into the grocery store or drugstore or department store and pick up a product, there's like a lot of preservatives in there, and that product can live on the shelf for through the apocalypse. Not a funny joke right now, but that's probably too much preservative, and we don't need that. Anyway, I've gone off now for a while on phenoxyethanol because it's really, I don't know why everybody loves to hate it, except I think that it sounds scary and there's enough buzz around it that people are talking about it. If you want to learn more about it or hear some of what I just said, read it on the website. We have a section on the site on credobeauty.com called Ingredients You May Be Wondering About. And there's a blurb about phenoxyethanol there. And I also wrote a blog a while ago called, so I think it's called Fear of Preservatives. And it's about this issue, and I highlight phenoxyethanol in there. So check that out. All right. I think that we are probably going to start to wrap it up. I have one more question here about a product question, which is a really great way to end things because product is fun to talk about, and that is what we're doing here. So best anti-aging cream for women in their 20s. First of all, you're in your 20s, so that's awesome. My colleague Joshua thinks that Vital Boost by Goldfaden MD is a great one to recommend for you. I love product now. I mentioned earlier that I didn't I didn't come to this space as a product junkie, but now I think that this is a fascinating industry. And I love the products that we have to offer at Credo, and I love the brands and their founders and their stories and their ingredients. But I am not the person to answer some of these questions. That would be much better suited for Credo Beauty our live chat. Those guys will totally have you covered. All right, so I am going to end our Clean Beauty 101 with this message for you. There's so many things that are out of control in our lives. In fact, we have very little control even when we think we do. I'm a planner, I'm a researcher. I like to think that I have a lot of control. And the truth is, and I think that what we've seen in the last couple of weeks is there's a lot of things that we can worry about and try to do and we still have no control over. One of the things that we do have control over is what we bring into our home and put on our bodies and how we vote with our dollars to support brands that are pro-environment, pro-health, pro-woman, inclusive, and Credo is that, and our brand partners are that. I love this team and I love the mission to make clean beauty mainstream. So I hope that you will visit Credo for your clean swaps and for personal recommendations for you, and shop with a lot of confidence knowing that we've done a lot of homework for you, and then we also want to empower you to ask hard questions and to be pushing not only our industry but all industries in a better, more transparent direction. This is something we do have control over, and especially if we vote not just with our dollars, but we vote for candidates that support a pro-health and still pro-business agenda. You can be both. We are. That's what Credo. We're here to make a buck. We're not gonna. We're unapologetic about the fact that we want to be a successful business that's pro-health and pro-environment. If we vote for those people, we will pass federal policy to update that 1938 law so that even if somebody doesn't even hear about Credo, but they walk into their drugstore, they too will be a lot safer and have fewer toxic chemicals in the products that they put on their bodies and on their children. So that we have some control over, that we can be working for, and I hope that you will, and I hope that you will have fun doing it. Thank you so much. Bye.